They are the forgotten ones. The world has not forgotten the atrocities of the Holocaust, but the West conveniently chooses to forget that the Soviet Union is also guilty of most massive and cruel crimes against mankind. The West has never apparently realised or acknowledged that the Second World War only rid the world of one of the two equally revolting tyrannies. So this article is from 25th of the 11th, 1987. It's titled, "Lest We Forget, a Quiet Reminder of Soviet Guilt." That was a big article. That was like a statement. This documentary is about my great-grandfather Venda Liivet, also known, you'll hear several times, Grandad Fred, Grandad Liivet. My great-grandfather spent his later life living in Rochdale, just outside of Manchester, where he wrote to the newspapers, mainly the Rochdale Observer. He mostly wrote opinion pieces on opinion columns. His writing style is very, he takes a lot of information and makes it very concise and easy to read.
He's extremely articulate and he did not suffer fools at all.
He shows human value in his writing. He takes big things that are very much distant and far away and shows you how they affect people.
Reading his articles when that at least gave me some insight to not letting injustice go all the time, because he's right. You should, if nobody stands up for anything, no one's going to. So I thought he was right to do that. I spent a lot of time with my granddad Fred. I used to go to boarding school up there, so we used to stay with them all the weekends. We used to just stay with them a lot anyway. So literally growing up till probably the age of 15, I saw my granddad Fred a lot.
My best memories with him, honestly, of being in his house and just playing in his house while he was trying to catch some peace and quiet on the couch, because he would lie on the couch, try to ignore us, and we would just go wild round him.
He used to wear hearing aids, and he would drive my nana absolutely insane because he would pretend the hearing aid was off. It wasn't, but he'd just pretend he couldn't hear her, or he'd pretend he couldn't hear the conversation. He wouldn't answer anyone when he could hear us perfectly well. It was selective hearing. He loved doing that. He didn't have favourites at all because he loved us all the same, but he was very connected with my older sister Amy.
Me and Grandad were extremely close, more so than any of the other. For some reason, we just related to each other. And he had this thing, it still makes me laugh. Right? If you say it to Nana Chow Chow, she'll cry. He had patches in all of his jumpers.
He crouched down by the radiator.
Because he used to crouch by the radiator in the kitchen and rub and it was a self-soothing technique.
And he did this all the time, so he always had a hole worn in his jumpers from where, I don't know why, he'd have to smoke his pipe and do this.
He did it all the time, so much so that he wore holes in all of his woolen jumpers.
He was very proud of his heritage. I think one of the trips he made over to Estonia, he came back with the full national dress for all of us.
He was very proud with us of being from Estonia, but he never spoke about his life before being in the UK.
In his early life, he grew up in Pärnu Jakob, which is in Western Estonia.
Eesti piir käib vastu Hiina müüri. Venemaa on vahelt kadunud. Eestist vägev ilmariik on saanud. Igal pool ta leiab toetajaid.
Like the must? Okei. Do you want some more?
Mis asja?
Talle meeldis sinu põder.
Venda times, this is oneness. Also new, this oneness, the apple is
Very old and very new.
yeah.
Then you have original Estonian flag as well. It's quite old, I think. Then you can cut me out.
Need on põhimõtteliselt siin kapi.
Need on mingid vanad sõjaaegsed või?
Ei, need on kapini. Vaata, kui ilusaid pilte siin on. Seda Jakob tahab kindlasti vaadata. Võta enda kätte sirvi.
See pidi olema.
And that he sometimes when he came here during the summer, then Venda looked like a proper British man, like with a bonnet and like, well, not a bonnet, you know, the
flat cap.
Yeah, it's like a Peaky Blinders type thing.
Seepärast Venda oli 16 aastani ju seal, ta oli Pärnus oli sel ajal see kaubanduskool mingi ja ta õppis seal Pärnu kaubanduskoolis. Aga seal oli niimoodi, kui see sõjalt tuli ja siis sakslane siin sees juba, see sakslane pani need noored sinna lennuväe abiteenistusele, enne ei antud neil lõpudiplomeid.
No nad läksidki, aga nad läksid nagu Prantsusmaal maandusid. Läksid seal kohe.
Laevaga või?
Jaa, no siit läksid laevad ju põgenesid. Venelane tuli, laevad läksid ja see laev maabus Prantsusmaal ja sealt läksid Saksamaale kohe. No nagu väeosaga. Ta läks ära 44. aasta lõpus, siis tuli 16.
He ended up, as a lot of Estonians did, joining the German army because the Russians invaded Estonia.
Nad läksid ära kõik ju 45. lõppes sõda, aga 46. aasta sügisel ju Eesti vallutati ära. Ja nad läksid 45 aastat septembris vallutati Tallinn ja enne vahetult enne seda pidid minema. August võibolla või see lenname abiteenistus oli selline, seal olid Eesti noormehi üle 300. Ja see oli sellepärast, et mitte minna SS-i või minna päris väeosadesse. Nad olid nii noored, 17-18 niimoodi vanuses. Ja siis neil oli, et mitte sattuda päris sõjakeelisse ja siis võeti nagu lennuväe abiteenistusse, võeti nagu noori poisse, et välja õpetada siis Luftwaffes. Ja ameeriklased andsid nad üle inglastele, kuna inglased tahtsid neid Eesti poisse saada, osa läksid ameeriklaste kätte, need läksid Ameerikasse, osa läksid sealt laagritest Austraaliasse, kõik üle maailma laiali. Aga sealt vangilaagrist nagu tema oli nõus Inglismaale minema, andis selle nõusoleku ja ta oli Inglise luures, töötas.
He was part of a spy network while he was here. He joined the British Army, the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers.
46. aastal käis ta siin, ühesõnaga tuli langevarjuga ja läks ära selle paadiga. Ja tema oli üks viimased, kes pääses üldse, ülejäänud võeti kõik kinni ülejäänud, mis tulid kõik järjest. Et seal oli salaluure, oli nagu venelaste luure oli juba Inglismaal sees nii palju. Nii et tema oli seal paar aastat, aga ta jõudis Eestis ära käia. Ja tema mälestusest rääkis ta sellise loo, et ta vaatas metsas puu tagant, kuidas vanaisa tegi seal Karjamaal heina niitis.
He wrote in a way that was fighting for people because he had such a horrible start to his life, middle to his life. And I think he wanted others to have a better one, so he wrote to stop people having such a harsh life he did.
Grandad would shut himself in the back room at his desk and he didn't want to be disturbed. And he wouldn't necessarily involve anybody else in what he wanted to say. It was the person he was writing to. So he'd do all this writing, get all flustered and then send it off and that was it and it was never talked about again. I honestly think that the reason he wrote so much was because he did come from a communist country. So he comes from a background where you are not allowed to say what you think. And then, going on to doing intelligence, you're still not allowed to have an opinion on anything and you're not allowed to talk about anything and your opinions, he comes from a country where his opinions are the opinions of the state. And then if you start spying or you do intelligence, your opinions are nothing because you cannot give yourself away. So I think basically our whole lifetime of not being allowed to have his own opinions meant that when he was allowed to express himself, he expressed himself vigorously and often. Because that was... Can you imagine the control that you can take back over your own life if you're allowed to suddenly voice your opinions?
Most of what I have of him in a way, are his articles, because that's what we have the most of, except photos, which I've now got. But before that I didn't have his photos. A lot of us just had his articles. And his articles, he put himself into them, so you can kind of see his personality and who he was.
Both my granddads are war heroes and only one gets talked about. That is a shame. Because it is a big deal. He did a lot for this country. The difference is he had to do it quietly.
Can the world's second superpower, bedeviled by massive internal unrest and minimal living standards, really be trusted as no danger to the rest of the world?